um, the principal of St. Ignatius College of Education, the former principals, the faculty, and students. I deem it a very special pleasure to be in your midst this afternoon. When I accepted this invitation, it was a moment of great joy to me because of my association with St. Ignatius College for Education almost 30 years ago, when many of you, even professors, would not have been there. I've come there as a student leader, 42 years ago. I've come there as a student leader from the All India Catholic University Federation and addressed several meetings and seminars on campus. Also because Sister Maggie is a very personal friend of mine. And as I was asked, as I told them when they wanted to introduce me, I said, please tell the audience that I am a good friend of the ICMs. I have worked with the ICMs since the year 1977, when many of you in the audience were not born as yet. It has been a long journey of mutual inspiration, being inspired by many members of the ICM. And in particular, I would like to recall my very close friendship with Sister Jean de Vos when she was in charge of the YCS in the country. So my days also go to YCS days. But the joy within me on that day does not continue today because of my physical situation. So I want to already express my difficulties in being as passionate as I would normally have if my health had not failed me. Human rights is not an academic subject. Human rights has to touch each one's heart. But before that, let me appreciate the students of your college. And I understand they are first year students who have taken the initiative for observing this International Day of Human Rights. And as rightly said by the young lady who was leading the program, to create awareness in the minds of the student and faculty who are gathered here. I want to recall the words of a professor, not from outside the country, not from outside Tamil Nadu, but from Madurai Kamaraj University, Professor Jagannathan, who served as the head of the Department of Gandhian Studies. Can the organizers ensure that we have a complete mute all? These days, when there are special speakers, there are special new audience also who come in. So we are always careful to ensure that I speak to the audience I was meant for and not for the visitors who have entered to cause problems. So this Professor Jagannathan, who was the head of the Department of Social Gandhian Studies, several years ago in the early 2000, while inaugurating a program of human rights education in the Lady Doak College, had this to say about human rights. And seeing that we were involved in that, he said, human rights was a bad word once upon a time. And when it was a bad word, Mr. Henry was associated with it. Now, human rights has turned to be a very fashionable word, and he continues to be associated with it, and I'm very happy to say so. Perhaps Mr. Jagannathan did not know and has not lived to see, because he is no more, that human rights today is not a bad word, but those associated with human rights, not the teaching of it, not the awareness creation of it, but the implementation of it, are no longer praised. They are called anti-nationals in this country. And for your young minds, இந்த கூட்டத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடிய இளைஞர்கள், தேச விரோதிகள் என்றால் என்ன என்பதை மிக ஆழமாக புரிந்து கொள்ள வேண்டிய ஒரு அவசியம் இருக்கு. You have to understand it in a very, very deep fashion. And we will come to it towards the end. I'm happy that the organizers have also referred to emerging trends. And therefore, I can refer to some of the emerging trends. And these anti-nationals need not be people who struggle on the roads, who protest on the roads, who strike on the roads. But it can very well be your own professors, your own head of departments, your own principals, because teachers, academicians, trade unionists, or even a Catholic priest, a Jesuit Catholic priest, belonging to the same congregation which runs St. Xavier's College and St. Xavier's College of Education just opposite your campus, or almost opposite your campus. But and Swami is now in jail from the 8th of October till now. And these are people who did nothing but translate this word human rights into action. Friends, let me start, therefore, before proceeding with the content, let me pay tribute to all those who are here on the 72nd day anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. Pay tribute to all those who remain in prisons, not only in India, but in all parts of the world, only because they wanted to implement what human rights is. And these are people who are in prison. Luckily, these are not the people who are killed. So human rights is not a very convenient term. Many like it to be a very sophisticated term that can be engaged in conferences and seminars and workshops in five-star hotels and big university air-conditioned halls. And there is nothing wrong in it. But what is important in human rights is to make those words which comprise human rights meaningful to the large sections of the poor in this country who need to enjoy their human rights. And it is this translation, these words comprise human rights, that which is going to be a challenge. That in the process, I got unmuted. And we are today talking about unmuting of people who speak about human rights. I don't say Ignatius College did that to me, but this comes at a right time for people to understand. You speak about human rights and you speak loud about human rights, they unmute you in different forms. And one form of unmuting is the sending of you to the prison. What young minds today need to understand, and very simply understand, is that this is not a gift from heaven, as many would like to explain human rights to be. Every human being is born with human rights. They're born with human rights. And all humans are entitled to all human rights. And that is what is important. Human rights are not the privilege of lawyers and judges, of those who are educated, etc. Human rights is what we are born with, and therefore it will continue to be with us, whether it is respected or not. This morning I had a colleague of mine in court who came up to me and said, "Sir, I have seen that in the anti-CAA protests you were there, the Anti-Citizenship Amendment Act protests you were there, and there were several first information reports, which mean cases registered against you for protesting. And I've seen that you got all of them quashed in the High Court. I now have a question, sir. In some of the FIRs, the police have intelligently incorporated Section 75 of the Juvenile Justice Act to ensure that children will be attracted, and to say mothers came with children. And all that I had to tell him was this: my dear brother, don't forget, human rights are for all peoples, and they have all human rights. So if the mother goes to a protest and the mother takes her daughter or her baby to the protest, the child has a right to be there, as long as the child was not forced to be there. And I went one step further, because I knew who was the prosecutor. And I said, please inform the court in lighter vein that the prosecutor who's there, I know her father and mother. And I would like to tell the court that I have seen her in the arms of her father and mother in several protest meetings that the father and mother participated in. He gave a good laugh. Children have rights, and they have all rights. The expression of those rights might differ, but they have all rights. So what is human rights that we are talking about? 1993, we had a Human Rights Protection Act in our country, which for the first time defined what human rights was. And we have given ourselves, through this legislation, a historic definition. We are very good at giving good definitions. And I say it with sincerity. Human rights is defined as the right to life, the right to equality, the right to liberty, and the right to dignity of the individual. But this right to life, equality, liberty, and dignity of the individual is that right which is there, guaranteed in our Constitution, in the part 3 of our Constitution, known as fundamental rights. So Article 21 taken from the fundamental rights, Article 14 taken from the fundamental rights, Article 19 taken from the fundamental rights, and the dignity falling under various provisions of the Constitution are all collectively known as human rights in our country. And in addition, they say, it is not only life, liberty, equality, and dignity, but it is also, in addition, all the rights, all these rights, which are also covered by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on socio-economic cultural rights as long as they can be handled in courts in India. So whole scope of our human rights is a very, very broad canvas, my dear friends. Very broad canvas. This right to life, my dear friends, is not the right to life which only says that you have a right to live as a human being. This right to life, which is one word, includes the right not to be tortured in police stations, tortured on campuses by teachers, tortured in school campuses by teachers with canes in their hands, tortured in police stations, tortured after marriage in the confines of your bedroom by your husband. All these fall within the definition of torture. So right to life includes the right not to be tortured, the right not to be subjected to violence against women, the right to education, the right to water, the right to health, the right to livelihood, the right to housing, the right to environment, and the list is long. Right to life also includes your right to education. And that is why you would have seen that children who are on the road in non-COVID times are being chased by their teachers to bring them to any school which is in the neighborhood of where the child is from. That is because the right to life includes the right to education. And a child who does not come to school is a child whose right to education, falling within the right to life, that child's human right is affected. Right to health is the same. Right to water is the same. Right to livelihood is the same. Right to basic necessities of life is the same. And many of you will be shattered by what I say. Right to food is covered. Right to water is covered. Right to housing is covered. This gentleman is reading as much as he wants into it. But does he not know that on the streets of Palayamkottai, I find every day people living on the streets, and therefore they don't have homes. Many of them don't have livelihood, and therefore we find them begging. Many of them don't have right to education because their children are not seen going to school. Many of them suffer from various injuries and health complications, and yet they don't go to hospitals. And what is this assurance of the right to life, including all this? All what you say is true, but these are fundamental rights which fall within the definition of right to life. Our right to equality is equally strong. And our right to equality is one of the most powerful rights to equality in the globe, because it doesn't stop by saying man and woman are equal. It says women were kept away from enjoying their equality for generations together in this country. And if that equality which they were denied for generations has to be reinstalled, then more opportunities should be provided to women in order that they will start enjoying equality. You get what I'm saying? If people belonging to a particular caste are prevented from engaging in society in different ways, then our constitution says the people from those castes should be given the opportunities they were not given historically for generations together. And the constitution has gone on to interpret that the same right will go to persons with disabilities, with transgenders, etc. Friends, this is what is called positive discrimination. Yes, we are discriminating. In the judiciary today, there are more opportunities being given to women. If you perhaps wanted to use a scale of merit, many judges may not have to be there if it went on merit. There might be men who are better than the women. But the principle of more positive discrimination weighs in favor of women, as a result of which more women are given an opportunity, because that is how the system will become equal gradually as the years progress. And this right to equality bans discrimination, bans untouchability, and promotes special provisions for women and children, etc. The right to liberty you are aware of, but the right to liberty also within its ambit looks at large sections of our population who still continue to be bonded labor, forced labor, who continue to be trafficked. All these sections are covered under this provision of the right to liberty. And denial of their right to liberty is a denial of their human rights. And the last is dignity. So life, equality, liberty, and dignity. These are the four rights which fall within our definition of human rights. Friends, what is important is that our country has not left itself with only a law. This Protection of Human Rights Act has created an institution called the National Human Rights Commission and the State Human Rights Commission under one law. And in addition, my dear friends, we are the only country globally which today enjoys 169 such national and state human rights institutions, which are supposed to work for creating awareness. Today we should have seen not Ignatius College, we should have seen the State Human Rights Commission commissioning all colleges in the state to have online seminars on human rights, because today is the 10th. It costs us no money, but it commits us to an action. It brings in awareness. 169 institutions, my dear friends. And in these institutions, complaints are entertained. These institutions are meant to advise the government. These institutions are meant not only to advise the government, but also to ensure that complaints are handled, which are brought to their notice, and complaints which fall within their respective parameters. Friends, what is important is these institutions are present in every state. Every state has a Human Rights Commission, a Women's Commission, a Child Rights Commission, a Minority Commission. Some states also have an SC Commission, a State Information Commission, ST Commission, and you can go on and on. So institutions. So our country not only has a law that defines human rights, but has also created institutions. And that is why it is important today that you, the future teachers of human rights, our teachers in schools, understand what this human rights is and understand the role of teachers in human rights. I would only like to correct the person who introduced me, because it deals with human rights education, to say that we were with 18 lakh children in 22 states in over 25,000 schools. A big number. 11 lakh children were from Tamil Nadu. And perhaps some of you might have also been those students. And human rights there was taught by teachers. And I was a firm believer that the best teacher for human rights would be the class teacher of that particular class. That teacher knows every student. Human rights is not equal for everybody. It changes from person to person because the understanding will differ. And the class teacher has a very great understanding of every student and therefore would be able to take the message of human rights in a better fashion to that particular student. So it's very, very important that teachers are trained in human rights. I give Sister Maggie my offer, and I've made these offers several times. You want a course on human rights? My offer stands for each one of your students to go out with a certificate from our Institute of Human Rights Education on human rights. And many of these students here will be wondering what I'm talking about. And I want to recall to them the story of one of my students of human rights, who's today a teacher of mathematics, who studied B.Ed in St. Xavier's College next door. But he was a student of human rights in the Theni district of Tamil Nadu. And his teacher was one lovely lady called Jodhimani teacher. And this boy, Ganesha Perumal, was playing in his village near his school on a Saturday morning when he heard somebody scream opposite her house, and he moved there. Naturally, he was playing, and he found this old lady, and this is an Usulambatti area, so you have these big heavy ear weights on your ears, and your ears are hanging because of the weight. And this lady was cursing her daughter-in-law and directing her to ensure that daughter was killed. And this boy was stunned. He walked up to that lady. He had the courage to walk up. And he went to her and said, "My teacher in school has told us that boys and girls are equal. And you seem to be saying something else and directing this child to be killed. That is wrong." What would he have got? He got a tight slap. But this boy was not to be frightened by that slap. Half an hour later, he goes, he finds a larger crowd gathered. He picks up his courage, goes back to the same old lady and says, "Ache, இப்பயாச்சும் கேட்டுக்குங்க. தயவு செய்து அந்த பெண் குழந்தைய ஒன்றும் செஞ்சிடாதீங்க." He got another tight slap on his other cheek. The boy went home, spoke to his mother, and he comes back with his mother after entering into a contract with the mother. And the contract was, "Amma, I will bring this child. Can you keep the child today, Saturday, and tomorrow, Sunday? And on Monday, bring the child to my Jodhimani teacher in school. Jodhimani teacher will look after the child." Amma says yes. A very special Amma, like many of you will in future be. So with his mother, he comes, bold this time, walks up a bigger crowd, goes to the old lady and says, "Don't hit me this time. My mother is here. We have come to only ask you to give the child to us so that we can allow the child to live. And we will take it to our Jodhimani teacher who will ensure that the child lives. Her right to life should be protected." There was total silence. And then there was a resolution passed that the child, and an assurance given in public that the child would not be killed. Ganesha Perumal did not believe them. Next day he goes to school on Monday. He tells his Jodhimani teacher what happened. And Jodhimani teacher then asked the children, "What would you do in future to prevent such girls from being killed?" If you asked an IAS officer, they would have a program for 15 crore rupees to be covered in 3 districts where all the ruling parties, men or women, would have shares. But here were all the children in class 7 of this SC school, residential school, who came forward and said, "Teacher Amma, we will play hide and seek in our village. And while we play hide and seek, we'll watch which are the mothers who are pregnant. And The mothers who do deliver a female child, we will go and hide in those houses to make sure the female child is there and is not lost. What an answer. Friends, this comes not from a lawyer. This comes not from a High Court judge or a Supreme Court judge. This doesn't come from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. This came from a school teacher who loved her children and who taught human rights. The boy today is a teacher of mathematics. He is from Tirupur. His parents are working in Tirupur as laborers. And the boy always says, "Sir, very difficult to teach human rights. I know how difficult it is. But I don't know how Jodhimani teacher impressed herself for us." Friends, I want you to be that Jodhimani teacher. That is the greatest joy that you can give. You will not know the joy that you will get to make many of your students who come from the poorest of the families understand that their lives can change. And that is what will happen. In this pandemic, in the last almost a year, we have seen, the 9 months we have seen, children have suffered more, women have suffered more. The poorest of the poor have suffered. Dalits and Adivasis, fisherfolk, they have suffered the worst. Migrant laborers. And human rights was not able to protect them. The courts were not always ready to stand with them. And I hope that the world, with all of you entering into it, which needs liberation, will get that liberation through your engagements in human rights. I will stop here. I wish all of you, and my offer, as I told you, stands. Being a teacher is the best profession that you can always get into. Be good teachers, but make sure you are also good teachers who understand what human rights are of your children.